This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
It's always a challenge to figure out exactly where to start, but I usually talk about what talks to me. There's a Yisro that we spoke about on Chanukah. Not we, but that has been spoken about. That it's a big Yisro on Chanukah. Chanukah is the midah of Hoid. And exactly what Hoid means, Zevi, Mustama, you know, but Zevi Lightman. Shout out to Zevi Lightman, teacher of Hasidic and Kabbalic concepts. Yeah, but the midah of Hoid is thanking Hashem, which is what Chanukah, the focal point is, Hoidah, the Nisim, but there's another inyan that takes us into the Choshech, and now we're really in the middle, we're in the thick, which is the midah of Hoid, but the element, the aspect of being Moideh. Being Moideh, that's also the element of Hoid. And when there's a greater force, when there's the Eibishter, that we subjugate, we put ourselves down, we're mevatel ourselves, and we make room for the Eibishter. And that's something that we're supposed to work on Chanukah for these times of Tevis, Shvat, as the days are decreasing slow. Soon we're going to get into the spring in the Chodesh Aviv. But I want to talk about this for a little bit and how it relates to the Kabbalah Satira, Yisro. And the Yisro is that often, especially in these very short days, which is always the seasons are really misgala. It's just that's the chisonis, but the pnim is what we can be feeling on the inside. That there's the darkness, v'chulu, a concept that's often spoken about. But the Yisro is that the more it's hard to believe. Sometimes it's hard to tap into. But the more that we take ourselves out of the equation and we make room for Kadosh Baruch Hu, the more Hashem can dominate, the more Hashem can take over, and Hashem can deliver the Yeshuas. And sometimes we feel we have to go into turbo mode and we have to do and more Hashem, more. But it's mamash the opposite in Yishkai. And that's what we learn from Chanukah. That's the Urs of Chanukah that's supposed to carry us through to Purim the next. And we're in that bridge now. And what we have to remind ourselves is that the more we take ourselves out of the equation, the more that we're mevatel, the more concepts we spoke about is numbness, is to melt ourselves, take us out, and make place for the Shekhinah, make place for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to permeate, to take charge, the better off we're going to be. The more betachin, the less of us, the better off we're going to be. As opposed to what our logic, what the Yetzer Hara says is the more shtadlis, the more you're going to overdrive, the more that you are yadi, the more you're going to accomplish, the more you're going to conquer, the more you're going to feel successful. That's the challenge that we often encounter, and that's the avodah of life. So what would the Brisker Rav do in a situation where if someone came over to him? I read this Ma'aseh last Shabbos, and I thought it was so unbelievable. I was at my niece's Shabbos Brachos. I read this Ma'aseh, and I'm like, this is for sure something that has to be said over. It was said over from Rabbi Saul Brag in the Sichas Yisrael. I subscribed to that email because his Torah is unbelievable. And he quoted the Maisa, the Brisker Rav, besides being the Brisker Rav, being the Das Torah, the Tzaddik, the Bal B'tachin that he was, unbelievable the stories that are said about him. He had the financial strain, the financial burden of collecting for Brisk Yeshiva, for the Koil, to support the Yingla Light, to make sure the Bachman were taken care of. A big veer came to the Brisker Rav and said, listen, you're a big tzaddik, you're a big Talmid Chacham, what do you need to be busy with these monetary, olam hazdik things? I'm going to take the brunt, I'm going to accept the yoke, the financial undertaking of the entire yeshiva's brisk for the rest of your life. You don't have to worry about it. The Brisker Rav responded. He said, if I take any money from you, I'm going to lose the need, the constant connection that I have now with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If I take the money from you, I'm going to lose that, and it's not kedai. And he didn't just say it. He wasn't a man of words, he was a man of action. And it's in print. He turned down the money that would have sustained the yeshiva, brisk, for years and years. It would take off the complete daiga, give him complete menuchas nefesh. He could learn, he could grow the yeshiva, he could dedicate himself. But he says, not could die for me to rely and be, I have peace, I have the money, and not need Hashem. He didn't want to be in such a situation. He turned down the money. Means is that the Brisker Rov is telling us through this story. It wasn't just a story, just a nice anecdote about the Brisker Rov. It's being Meshayir, it's painting, it's portraying that bitachon isn't just something that we have to come on to, that, when we're in a bad situation, we're against the wall, let's be Baal Bitachon, let's open up the Chavis Avavis. Being a Baal Bitachon is a lifestyle. It's a way of existing, it's a way of living. And it's not just when I'm stuck, it's not just when I'm in the mud. It's lichatchila. The Brisker is showing us that he wanted to have to always be in a constant state of being b'yitech b'lekim. Because if he didn't have that, he may have been able to support his yeshiva and have all the Torah. But if he didn't have the Eibishter, then what's that worth? It's nothing. And for us, same thing. We're always confronted with situations. But when we choose God, when we choose the Eibishter, that's not just, we're stuck, let's choose him. That's the most ideal, the most enriched way of living, and we can never ever forget that and realize that we are able to access the Malach Machem Lachim. He wants to help us, and Boi B'mida, as much as we put into him, that's how much we can take out. And the more we say Koich V'etzim Yad, the more we say, I got it, I'm going to handle it. Hashem says, okay, let's see, this is what you can do. This is the constant battle. This is the constant tug of war. And this is what we have to work on overcoming and always choosing bitachon over my strength and my might. In this week's Parsha, we come to Matan Torah. What happened? The Medrash tells us, Medrash Rabbah, Parak Aleph, Pasuk Zayin. The Pasuk tells us, Nitna Torah b'shloisha dvarim. Pretty famous Medrash, Be'esh, B'mayim, Uva fire, water, and in the desert. I heard from Rav Nachum Binder, the Rav in Hampshire Heights. I had the schus of living next to him for several years. I heard this on a Vayimayim clip. He said something unbelievable. So what's the significance? What's the maila of these three things? Eish, Mayim, and Midbar. So a well-known pshat, a well-known approach to this, which he quoted from Rav Meir Shapiro, is each one is another t'nai, another ingredient to be the optimal, ideal Mekabel Torah. As Klal Yisrael was being Mekabel the Torah, we relearn Ma'aseh Avasim Labanim, and we relive, we experience. And if we want to be zoiche, we want to become vessels, receptacle vessels of the Torah, we need these three ingredients. What's Eish? Eish is Mesiras Nefesh of the individual. Like Avram Avinu, he jumped into the Kibbush Eish. That was exemplary Mesiras Nefesh. So we need to be Mesiras Nefesh. Mayim, that's the next level. It's not enough just as a yachid, as individuals, to be Mesiras Nefesh, but Mayim was by Kiryas Yamsuf, and the whole Klal Yisrael was ready to jump into the water. They were afraid what's going to be, and they were confronted with the Yam, and they had Betachin, they jumped in, the water split. That's the collective Mesiras Nefesh of the entire Klal Yisrael. And the third madrig of the Midbar is very nice. Mesiras Nefesh for Klal Yisrael, but it can't just be a one-time thing. The Midbar demonstrated, it was a clear demonstration of Klal Yisrael's unwavering levels of bitachon, not just a happenstance, not just a one-time thing in the Kibbush Eish or by Kiryas Yamsuf, but the Midbar was a matzah for 40 years. That was like a whole lifetime in and of itself. And that was the final prerequisite, the final ingredient, that we can't just be Mesiras Nefesh, we can't just live with God as individuals or even as a group at particular specific moments. It has to be a lifestyle. We have to be fully plugged in for the long haul, for the long term. That's what Meir Shapiro's pshat. Beautiful. But Rav Nachum Binder, he said it in his own name, so we'll say it in his name. He suggested a different connection, a different spin. And he said these three Nyanim, Eish, Mayim, and Midbar, correspond to something else. Eish, corresponds. These three things correspond to different nisyonis, the different challenges that we battle with, that we deal with. The battle of Aish is the little Aish. Unfortunately, persecution, attacks, the Holocaust, October 7th, Rachmana litzlan. Real Aish, gunfire, bombs, missiles, real destruction. That's Aish. Then you have Mayim. Mayim represents the nisyonis of Kedusha V'Tara. Mayim, there's a connection between Mayim, yes, it's Metahar, but also it's a reference to the nisyonis that come to Shmir Sinayim, Bris, to all those type of Inyane Kedusha. And of course, when the Yetzer Hara attacks us in those ways, assaults us with those nisyonis of things that are inappropriate, things that are going to take us down, things that are going to coat us in impurity, in lust, then what happens? That's the Yetzer Hara's gateway. That's how he takes us and he pulls us down. He says, you shagets, you piece of trash, look what you just looked at, and you're going to go learn a piece of Gemara? You're going to go sit down and learn a Rashba? You're going to go to Ashir? You learn Daf Yomi? You sick? You don't belong doing this. That's the Nisayan of Mayim. And the last one is the Nisayan of Midbar. What's Midbar? What's the Nisayan of Midbar? The Nisayan of Midbar is what Lech Tech is all about. The Nisayan of Midbar are all the uncertainties, the what will be's, the question marks, the unknown, the lack of clarity, not knowing right and left, up and down, which is what we deal with, many of us, every single day, all the time. Parnasa, Shalom Bayis, children, our schedules, refuah, shidduchim, all the things that we need. That's a constant midbar. What's going to be? How is this going to be resolved? When is the Yeshua going to come? When am I going to have to stop dealing with this? When am I going to get a raise? When am I going to find that? All these things? It's all midbar. It's all midbar. Says the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Nitne Torah b'shalish dvarim be'eish u'v'mayim u'v'midbar was no coincidence. These are the three ingredients that's necessary. They're prerequisites, they're contingencies, that until you're ready to fight the Yetzer Hara on all these three battlefronts, you're not a player. You're not in the rink. You can't enter, you can't become, you can't be a kli kibul for the Torah. Because we're inevitably going to get assaulted be'esh, with real chas v'shalom wars, Rachman Son, and b'mayim, with all of the nisyonis of Kedusha V'Tara. And we're always confronted with the nisayon of Midbar. We never know where, how, what, who. We always want answers. We always want Yeshuas. We always want clarity. And we're running here and we're running there. And we think it's going to be better, and then it doesn't. And then we think it's up and down. It's the seesaw of life. And we want to hit equilibrium. Perfect weather, temperature should always be good, and we're never going to get that. And Hashem says, I need you to be able to fight midbar. The mental anxiety, the mental worry, the panic. I need you to overcome. I need you to sit down and learn. I need you to do chesed and ma'asim tovim and mitzvahs, even when everything isn't misudar in the brain. Even when everything doesn't make sense. I need you to be better than that. I need you to overcome that challenge. And when you do that, that is how you can overcome and become a proper, suitable, and optimal Mekabel Torah. So it's in the sign. I want to hone in for a moment on this last Nekuda. I'll keep 1 more minute. This last Nekuda of the Midbar, which I think is so important. The Nisayon of Midbar, this never-ending. We have the Nisayonis of Mayim and of Eish, but the Nisayonis of Midbar, of the anxieties, of where we're going, what we're doing, what's going to be. This upcoming week, next week, Chaf Hei Shvat, is a very special day. It marks the yahrzeit of a very heilige tzaddik, Talmid Chacham, Telzer, Rav Motel Pagramanski, don't know if you've heard of him or not. Artschool has a book about him. He was a tremendous Eloi. Tremendous Talmid Chacham. Rav Gifter had the most covered for him. He didn't get married for a long time. He got married for short kufa and whatever. He mamish kol Torah kula. He was a malach alekim. This Rav Matal. It's a pretty famous story about him. I don't know if people know in his name, but the story goes as follows. The story goes, it should be L'u'id Nishmasa, he didn't have children, so any Torah that we're saying should be Zeicher Nishmasa, is Shamash Avnalila, should be made Zeicher for all of us, should be a schos, Torah this Maisa. Rav Matal was once traveling on a train with another fellow Yid. It was a Friday. And they were going to a certain town where they were planning on spending Shabbos. Rav Matal and his acquaintance, they got so absorbed in a Torah discussion, they missed the stop. Rav Matal was unfazed, he was fine, but his friend was Oismensch, and his friend was a sheikhet, who was a moil, very talented guy. And he started getting all nervous, and he said, Rav Matal, what's going to be? And Rav Matal said, don't worry, it's going to be okay. And he said, but Shabbos, and we had accommodations in the other place, and what are we going to do? He said, Al Tidak, it's going to be okay. Get to the next stop, Rav Matal, with complete serenity and peace, walks off the train to this random town, doesn't know a soul, and his acquaintance comes along with him. And they get off, it's a couple hours before Shabbos. Looks like a very goyish town. No one to talk to, no one to ask. There's no aisle 9, there's no gourmet glad, nothing doing. No satmar, garnished. This guy's panicking. Rav Matal, completely composed, just don't worry. And he said, a Yid is never lost. A Yid is always meant to be where he is. And if we're here, there must be a reason. After a few minutes, they finally bump into someone who looks like they can help. He says, where do we go? What can we do? He says, I think there's a Yid a couple miles away. They start packing, they put their possessions together. They start running. They're up against the cock of Shabbos. And the whole thing is a gamble. They're panting. They're out of breath. Knock on the door. This Yid almost faints. He said, I can't believe it. He said, what are you doing here? And Rav Matal and his friend are like, okay, I'm so happy we hit the jackpot. And this guy's going broke, he's going crazy. He says, I can't believe it. He felt like he was Mamash Eliyahu and Novi and Avram Vinu arriving at his doorstep. And they said, okay, we're so happy that Hashem worked it out, that we're here. Can we stay for Shabbos? He says, of course, here's your bed, here's the food. I was Mamash expecting you. I can't believe that. They come in, they unpack their stuff, and say, I need to tell you something, the host. He says, I know you don't know this, but I want to tell you something. He said, my wife just had a baby 7 days ago. Tomorrow, I needed a moil. You see the city I'm living in? There's no one around, there's nothing doing. Became very clear how the whole thing was nishtalsha, how the whole thing was nisgala. And Rav Matal looked again at his acquaintance, the moil, and he said, never forget, a Yid is never lost. Wherever a Yid is where he's meant to be. And I think that's a chizik. This last Tanai of Midbar, we're all lechte chachar b'midbar, we're all trying our best. We all have nisayonis and challenges. And the way to ultimately walk out victorious in all of them is with the stark, clear realization that a Yid is never lost. Wherever we are, b'chol makom shehu, b'chol matzav shehi, is where we're meant to be, we're meant to be doing. Make the best out of it. No, Hashem put me here. I'm trying my best. I'm doing my best. And Hashem needs me to fulfill my tafkid, my shleimus in whatever situation it is. And when we realize that, when we tap into that, and when we believe it with utmost certainty and conviction, we talk of like the Yidden back then in Parshas Yisro, we're zeicha to be the Mamlechas Kahana V'Goy Kodesh, and we too be zeicha to become the Klei Kibul, receptacle vessels of Hashem's Torah, and once again be called and be reassigned our position at our post of the Torah, and to be the Mamlechas Kahana V'Goy Kodesh.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.